Hey guys, welcome back to the Friday Vlog, where we discuss activity that goes on here with the BuzWeaver channel. That includes things like current events, headlines that are in the news, pop culture, social media, technology, and items of interest that come up during the week that allow us to have a little bit of a dialogue. If this is your first time here to the channel, welcome. If you are a returning visitor, a viewer from Alternative Tech, and or a dedicated YouTube subscriber, I want to thank all you guys for your continued support.
From the Hill, Capitol Hill vendor hit by ransomware attack report. A tech vendor used by dozens of House offices on Capitol Hill for constituent outreach services has reportedly been hit by a ransomware attack, becoming the latest victim in a series of cyber attacks to target U.S.-based entities. And as you guys know, as we've talked about here on the channel, that Colonial Pipeline paid the ransomware within hours of being hit with it, so as, of course, to not disrupt services. So, of course, this emboldened the hackers. And as I understand it, the FBI has investigated this most recent attack, as well as the Colonial Pipeline, and they've actually been able to recover some of the cryptocurrency used to pay the hackers, which I found to be very interesting. But as I understand it, it also disrupted Amazon, some facilities and or offices in the UK as well. So the hackers are continuing to be emboldened. Now, it would be a bit of a stretch to say that maybe in the weakened state that our country is in under Joe Biden, as we see this with our adversaries as well. Our adversaries, hackers, whomever, of course, is going to try to rattle the chain of the current administration or the country, because they know that Joe Biden is ineffectual. He will easily bend to the will of progressives or to whomever may potentially make him look bad or make him feel as though he is incompetent. He has to make sure that he maintains that popular kid in school mindset. So now we go over to the National Review. New York Times editorial board member disturbed by sight of American flag. Now this happened over the weekend last week. And as we see her comment here, I was on Long Island this weekend and visiting a really dear friend, and I was really disturbed. I saw, dozens and dozens of pickup trucks with expletives against Joe Biden on the back of them, Trump flags, and in some cases just dozens of American flags, which, is also just disturbing, because essentially the message was clear. It was, this is my country. This is not your country. I own this. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. For 4 years, the left have tried to tell us that we're a divided country. And it may be fair to say that they are obviously the ones who are divided. Look at her interpretation of fellow Americans simply having flags, but probably more specifically having Trump flags on their vehicles as they drove through Rhode Island. And this is not uncommon to see this sort of activity, but her reaction and response is really indicative of what Dinesh D'Souza often talks about in his documentaries, where we have groups of people in this country who detest their own country. In other words, they're willing to bite off their nose to spite their own face. The American flag is the iconic symbol of the United States. There is nothing more defining about the United States. And we see this in the Olympic Games, and we see this on military uniforms, and we see this across the world. Flags represent an icon of a country. That's how we can identify things very easily. Sometimes you see flags instead of words because people identify with icons, and the American flag is that icon. And then, of course, Mike Brzezinski over here gives her a little bit of a shoulder bump, because he says, right? As in, wow, this is really going on here. So very interesting to see, but not surprising, that even the American flag is now in this type of anti-leftist ideology and philosophy, that it is a symbol of hatred, a symbol of, the country that they want to be punished, the very country that they live in. These are the same people who propose and espouse socialism and communism, but don't go to those countries who have their own flags, but then wants to suggest that the very freedoms and luxuries that they are given that allow them to insult, condemn, disparage, disgrace the flag, This country allows them to do that. That's why they're able to do it. That's why they don't leave. Because I guess within the consciousness or subconsciousness of themselves, or maybe people telling them, they live in the best country in the world that allows them to be the people that they are. The hate-mongering, angst-filled racist that they actually are, especially with critical race theory, which is exemplifying the fact that these individuals immunize themselves from their own standards. In other words, they don't hold themselves to the same standards they expect from everyone else. They're on a different level. They're on a different frequency. To them, they can say and do whatever they want, and there's no repercussions. There's no responsibility being directed towards them for what they say because they're just allowed to do it. It's very, very disheartening. Shifting gears here, speaking of the left and Democrats, GoFundMe halts fundraiser for AOC's grandma despite a $104,000 haul. The funding campaign, launched by a conservative commentator to help the grandmother of U.S. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, has been yanked because a lawmaker's family is refusing to accept the $403,153 that has been raised, GoFundMe said Saturday. Now before I say anything, I just want to show you this. The system has failed my abuela. Here's private donations. Solve the problem. I don't want the problem solved. I want the system to fail. And I think this is very indicative, and it's mi abuela. Perdón. Yo estaba hablando incorrecto. Era mi abuela. There you go. For all the Spanish speakers out there, if that is of any of your inclination. But this is very indicative of the flag waving that we saw just a moment ago in the New York Post, or the National Review. Yeah, the National Review, where the woman was so offended by flags. And here you have someone who's solving a problem. Who solved the problem for Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez abuela in Puerto Rico. And of course, as typical, look, here's the other thing too. If the Democrats don't think of it, they don't create it, or it's not their idea, it's dumb. Very much like Project Warp Speed with the vaccine, that they oftentimes criticize it and they condemn President Trump. But now that it's in the hands of Joe Biden, it's all good, it's perfect, it's working great because it's Joe Biden. So there's this like mental switch that goes on and off in the mindsets of these individual people, where they don't realize the luxuries they have in this country, the rights and the freedoms and liberties that they actually have. And when it comes to critical race theory, have you ever been to the DMV lately? Have you been to get your driver's license or been to a government facility? There are things in many different languages to get your driver's licenses. They have it in 8, 9, 10 different languages. You can get your driver's license in Chinese if you want to, and do the whole thing in Chinese if that is what you want to do. That is symbolic of a diverse country. Now, you go to foreign countries, if these people try to go to a foreign country and try to espouse their values and ideologies and philosophies in those countries, they're probably not going to be very well receptive. And some people have tried it and done it, and guess what? They've come back to the United States. Now, in a little bit of shift of gears here, OnlyFans star 20 suffers heart attack from dry scooping TikTok challenge. Now, I don't want to go too into the actual article itself, but to illustrate that, this young girl here can do this challenge and nearly have a heart attack, or other young people like tweens can be half naked on TikTok and they don't get a community violation like I get when I do a video on CBD or Delta 8. And now that I've mentioned them, this video will probably be age restricted, which doesn't surprise me because the atmosphere and culture that we're living in right now is just really bonkers. To include this nonsense right here, and this woman just got slammed on Twitter, by the way, which I think is kind of well-deserved, because these people just seem like a bunch of ingrates who, when people come up with solutions to their problems, don't want the solution. They just continue to want there to be a problem. Just like we have said before, who benefits from racism? Who benefits from the call about racism? Who benefits in a fight, as it were, over racism? Well, obviously we can clearly see who it's going to benefit, because it's the same group of people who always talk about it, because they have to have that in their fight. That is their foundation. That is their platform. That is their battle banner. That is their flag. that they have to have. They don't want a solution to racism. They don't want a solution to a problem like her abuela in Puerto Rico. They don't want these things. What they want is to be able to be angst-filled, just like we saw with President Trump for 4 years. But of course, thankfully, we have TikTok to distract ourselves, where this young girl nearly killed herself in the process of a challenge. I did hear her story. It was kind of interesting. She was on the 911 call, and they were just kind of telling her maybe it's just a panic attack or maybe it's this, that, and the other. But thankfully, they did go out to her home. I don't want to get into the is she a defunder of the police kind of thing, and because I would never want anyone to be abandoned. Obviously, emergency services is going to come to anyone's aid, regardless of their ideology, their philosophy, their worldview, of course, because they are public servants. So I'm happy for them. I'm glad they're still doing their jobs, despite the fact that, defund the police, and we see the treatment that our police officers are getting. But that's the culture that we're currently in, and that's why you guys watch my content, so you guys can get a common sense, kind of cogent approach to what's going on, because it is a very crazy world. And that is the news for you guys that I found interesting and compelling that I wanted to share for this week.
All right, guys, so that's going to wrap it up for this Friday vlog. Thank you for the likes, the shares, and the comments. And of course, avail yourselves to the social media links below this video, to include Alternative Tech, where you guys can see weekly posts or daily posts that I have on those platforms. So be sure you're following me there. And of course, if you're here on YouTube, that would be the channel icon appearing right there on the screen, which you can click on and subscribe, as well as select notifications. That way you know when there's content here on the channel, to include the Friday vlog, video shorts, and community tab, in case you guys weren't aware. And I'll see you guys right there behind that camera next week.